The market is starting to look like a scary place, and I know a lot of you want answers, so I'm gonna try to take this video as slow and simple as possible for you to tell you exactly what you should do over the next year. If you're doing short-term rentals, Airbnb, VRBO, real estate investing, a combination thereof, vacation rentals, there's a very clear path on what you should do over the next year, and it's counterintuitive to probably what you've been studying. I hope this is your first time on the channel because this video is for all of you who do not like rental arbitrage. That is what this video is for, and I need to tell you that all the warning signals that you see in the investing world are just a sign that you need to change your strategy. The world is not ending, just how you're going to make your money is going to change. And I'm speaking to you, the real estate owner. Let's jump in. Welcome back, family. For those of you watching this video, even though it's probably not for you, those of you who are fans of the channel, thank you so much. And a lot of you know that I do not script my videos. So hang in there because there might be a lot of weird references and a lot of rabbit holes, but the goal of this is to give you what's at the very back of my brain. As deep in my 7 years of experience in the Airbnb game with over 100 properties, I'm gonna give you probably the most impactful stuff that I can give you in one video to help guide you. First, let's start with why we're here, right? Interest rates are rising. There is a summer slowdown with Airbnb where some people are getting less bookings and a lot of people are scared. And if you're a real estate buyer type, you might have bought property recently, especially if you're a new real estate investor where you only have 1 or 2 properties and you bought them over the last couple of years. You might have had your plan to be to, pay down your debts and then refinance, when your property appreciates and then, you get some cash out and reinvest again. Well, those hopes are dashed, right? With the raising interest rates, it'll drive down home values and it'll make your refinances cost more, so you're locked into your properties now. And a lot of you are doing Airbnb, but you're using co-hosts or other people to run your business for you, and you're hiring other housekeepers that are expensive. Now you're all in a spot that if Airbnb turned around and stopped making the money that it is making now, you might need to put your property on the long-term rental market and sign a year-long lease, meaning that if the going gets good again, you're already locked out of the Airbnb space because you owe your tenant their lease for the year. So now, I don't want you guys to be stuck in a position like that, because the whole point of you buying property was to increase your wealth through debt paydown and hopefully way better cash flow utilizing short-term rentals. The people that you've been following into the real estate Airbnb space couldn't see it coming, and I couldn't see it coming either, but the moral of the story here is if you take a dogmatic approach and you're too rigid in how you invest or run a business and you're unable or unwilling to change, that's when you go out of business. And that's why we can talk about Sears or Toys R Us or Nokia as prime examples of companies that didn't pivot and then they died. So buying real estate is great in certain parts of the market cycle. Buying real estate is a terrible idea in other parts of the market cycle. You can argue with me. Some of you might go, it's always a good time to buy real estate. That's really not true in my opinion. And especially when you look at it in means of trying to grow your wealth at some sort of pace. And a lot of you are very happy with the results that you've gotten with Airbnb lately. That's way cool. And a lot of you haven't considered rental arbitrage because you don't see the value of it because your primary value is debt paydown and buildup of equity in an asset, which is a home. So I need to bring you guys up to speed on really what a business is, what Airbnb is, and how to utilize it. Because all of you gurus who buy property like Bigger Pockets, Robuild, STR University, those guys, you're using the word Airbnb. You keep using that word, and I don't think it means what you think it means.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
I've been preaching this a lot, and I did this at a STR Wealth convention, that Airbnb is hospitality, and it's not real estate. And I don't want to go on a full soapbox on this, but I want you to understand what I mean when I say this. When you buy a property and you make its payments, its mortgage payments, no matter how you get the money, you're getting debt pay down. And you can pay down that debt through multiple means, right? However you collect cash on that property is how you collect cash. Whether it's long-term rentals, short-term rentals, you're using it as an event space, you're just paying out of pocket because you just know it's going to appreciate in value and there's no way you can put somebody in there because you're in the middle of a flip or something, right? Forced appreciation. There's all sorts of ways that you can make money on your real estate. What makes for a successful Airbnb or short-term rental business, what keeps them from going out of business, has nothing to do with the value of the real estate or what percentage you got your mortgage for or anything like that. How much equity you have in that. An Airbnb business, it beats its competition by offering a quality place to stay, transient housing, much like a hotel, offering a great experience, consistency, great reviews, and getting customers to come back and stay with you through the service that you provide. It's the providing of the service that gets you paid. It's not the providing of the real estate. If you think about other businesses that utilize real estate to run a service-based industry, you can look at a lot of them. Hairdressers might rent a salon, or a barber might do the same thing. A restaurant might rent a location in which to serve food. And there's all sorts of companies that rent space and then serve. And then there's ones that buy it, like Chick-fil-A, they probably buy their buildings and then serve people out of it. But they're not a real estate company. They're making money in real estate in some way, and you can make that argument, but that's really not the heart of how they're making their money or where their differentiator in their business model is, right? It's the service and it's the product that they provide. And in the case of a market downturn, where there's less money in a market, let's say people stop spending money on Airbnb or start spending more discretionarily? I hope that's a word. I really hope that's a word. But if you start to look at the dynamics of supply and demand here, people will still spend money on travel where they need to, and a lot of times still where they want to. They're just gonna spend it more responsibly. And if your costs are not competitive, if your costs are out of control, you haven't managed your business well, you won't be the one that wins the business because your prices will be too high because you cannot sustain operations at a lower price point. And this is the heart of a lot of what I've taught in my previous videos, which is becoming competitive so that way you're an all-weather business. And so, for example, if you look at Airbnb as a real estate business, you're tracking prices on the property, price per square foot. You're looking at your vendor cost as just this non-negotiable thing that just exists, like your housekeeping fees or the percentage that you pay your co-hosts. When your costs go up, you increase your costs to the end consumer, much like how a real estate market increases the price of a home or the cost of the monthly rent. A lot of real estate people think that this is just how it works. Now, if you have that philosophy and that approach to business, you're gonna run into other companies that see Airbnb as a place where you can create value by running systems. And a prime example of this is my housekeeping team. By having 120 properties, which takes a little while to scale, we'll talk about that in a second, but having 120 properties means that I can have a team of 15 or 20 full-time housekeepers. And if they're full-time, that means that they're paid by the hour. So paying them $12 to $15 an hour, which I promise you is very realistic, you can do that. By paying them $15 an hour or less, the amount of money it costs to clean a house goes down. And a lot of people have this myth about the cleaning fee being some magic number that people will just automatically pay. But you've seen it in the news lately where people are going back to hotels and having thousands of likes on those posts because they are citing just crazy fees. Cleaning fee being one of the main ones. You can control that cost. And if your cleaning fee was $500 a night, you would get less bookings at whatever your rate is, as opposed to if your cleaning fee was $100 per night. Don't you think? Because somebody still has to spend $400 more. If they don't have the money, they don't have the money. So this is where we start to see competitive advantage. My housekeeping cost on average is about $25 to $30 per housekeeping. And my competitors for the same properties, studios, one-bedroom apartments, theirs is $50 to $75 for housekeeping. So on a studio apartment, my advantage is now $25, $45, $50 per turnover that I have. And in prime markets where people are paying a lot of money, it's not as big of a deal because we do have less reservations. We'll have 6 or 8 reservations a month when the going is good. But when the market slows down and we start to have to adjust our prices lower to pick up more customers who are booking based on a need, they're just quick in and out of the city for a couple of days, we might see 12 or 14 reservations, 15 reservations a month in a studio apartment when we have to drop our rate in a slow season. Now, by doing that, we are creating an efficiency of $25 to $50 per time we do this. So 15 housekeepings, we've saved $750 per month in housekeeping fees, which allows us to become more price competitive because there's less fat in the deal. So you need to look at your housekeeping, your third-party housekeeping or your internal housekeeping team as fat in the deal, and you need to optimize that cost. If you look at Airbnb like a real estate business, it's really hard for you to see that these are the types of things that you can change because this is truly a business. Now, there's other parts of this business model that you guys really need to come to terms with, which is that price is super flexible. Prices can go way, way up. Think of the Super Bowl or any other world convention, like the World Cup is coming to the United States and hitting like 10 cities. The prices are going to go through the roof on those days. And in peak season, your prices are higher than they necessarily should be because peak season, high demand means that you can charge high prices. But that sword has another edge, and prices do need to go down to meet the market where it is. And if you're unwilling to bend down as much as you are willing to bend up, you are going to leave a lot of money on the table. And there is a term that you should look up called contribution margin. The same thing that airlines use. Contribution margin is the way that they look at how a flight works. It's going to cost a certain amount of money to fly, mostly gas and the staff on the plane, like the pilot and the flight attendants, right? Coffee is menial expense, so if they pour less coffee on the flight, it's not a big deal. Those seats are there. Whether they are full or empty, that thing is going to fly and it's going to cost the same amount of money. So when an airline sees that they're not getting enough seats booked on a plane, they will drop their rates. Sometimes you'll see crazy low flights, and that's why a lot of people are on like mailing lists to see when like Spirit, United, American Airlines will drop flights down to say $60. Airlines will fire sale off flights that they could have sold for $1,000 a seat in a different environment. That same seat will be $60 in a poor environment for them. And you need to be willing to make these kinds of fluctuations to contribute to your end of month costs. I want you to audit your business right now and look at it like a business. You have a mortgage or you have a rent payment, and you have utilities, internet, electricity, all that stuff. Your electricity won't change that much depending on how many guests you have. So I want you to look at it like more of a fixed cost, what your average electric bill is per month. You might have $3,000 a month or $4,000 a month of fixed costs. Now your housekeeping cost is an incremental cost. Every time you have a cleaning, your cost to run your business goes up. And the more guests you serve, the more toilet paper and shampoo you go through, but that's also very small incremental costs. So if you are booked 20 days of the month and make $4,000, you've broken even aside from your housekeeping costs. If you are booked 28 days a month and make $4,800, you have broken even aside from your housekeeping costs. Now, the point here that I want to make is the very first few bookings you get per month on your calendar should be your most expensive bookings. People should be booking your weekends and paying full price. But there comes a time where your calendar is more than half full and you're left with these scattered dates that are available. And if you toe the line too strict and you don't lower your prices enough, those dates go unbooked. And a lot of people make this false claim that if you're 95% booked, then your price is too low. Well, that's not true. If you got 95% booked without changing your prices, then it's true. But at that end of the month, when you have a few days left, hopefully only 4 or 5, right, that you would need to drop the price, you have to drop its price. Now, this becomes more dramatic in slower months. Now, what we're seeing in the market right now is a lack of consumer confidence, meaning that families aren't spending money as liberally because they are afraid of inflation and a coming recession. So they're being more discretionary with their money. Now, they still have vacation days, they still want to make memories with their family, they still want to travel. If they can afford to, they will. Now, it's quite possible that people will just book more last minute because of uncertainty. It's not a lack of money, it's just increased uncertainty. And those economics mean that people will book more last minute travel, more last minute accommodations. You might still get booked at the rate that you like. But in the case that people just don't have as much money available, or they're choosing to save more money out of fear of a recession, you could still get booked just at a lower price. And so if you have the ego to raise your price to $1,000 a night for the Super Bowl, you need to have the humility to lower your rate below $100 a night to get these last minute discretionary travelers. Now, this is one distinction that will make you thousands of dollars more than your competitors per year. This also affects how you perform on Airbnb. This is very important. If you have nearly 100% occupancy, Airbnb will boost your listing, and thus in rough markets, you'll have a better ranking than your competitors. These two things alone, lowering your housekeeping costs and then being willing to move the marker on your price points more than the others, these are the main two things that make a professional host outperform you, a real estate investor who's not thinking about their property. Now, the reason why you may not be thinking about this is you're using a co-host. Now, using a co-host is one of the worst things that you can do as an investor because they're chopping 20 to 30% of your top line revenue away. Now, if you think about it like this, you have a certain amount of risk in your deal, and there's a certain amount of total revenue and a certain amount of total profit that you can make. Now, if you had somebody who worked for you that was running your properties and you paid them a salary or paid them by the hour, your operating costs would be much lower than if you paid a percentage of your revenue. So you could have somebody who knows what they're doing work with you or for you for a lower rate than you pay these co-hosts. And if you hired your own housekeepers and you paid them by the hour, those are at a lower rate as well. The cost savings from these two things alone will generate you probably 30% more net operating income on your property because you're not paying 30% of your top line revenue away to housekeepers and co-hosts. So if you own a few homes and you're in the Airbnb space, the very first thing you need to do is find a way to fire your co-host and take over the business yourself. If you do not do this, you will not like what you see over the next year, because all the people who in-house all of their own staff and don't have the same cost basis as you, they will survive. But the moment that your co-host generates only $6,000 in revenue and keeps roughly $2,000 of it, and then your cost basis is over $4,000, you're now losing money, right? Where you normally would making $11,000 or $13,000 a month in revenue, that was fine. But when the market starts to squeeze, those with the most fat in their operating model will be the ones that would go out of business, and you'd be forced to put it into the long-term rental space. And you don't want that. To get to a point that you can do this, you're going to need to start doing rental arbitrage.
Just hear me out, mate.
Now, what's really cool about rental arbitrage in this case is in times of uncertainty, it's the easiest time to get the deals. I don't know if you know anything about rental arbitrage, so in short, it's where you find another owner of a property and convince them to rent to you their property. Now, if you look at the way that the market's going to be going with the interest rate hikes and, potential, doom and gloom with the recession, rents will get deflated. People will get evicted. There will be people, calling on homes and foreclosing and all this other stuff that could happen. Because of just all the shakeout, there will be landlords who are afraid enough that they will gladly rent to you for a 2-year-long or 3-year-long lease just to get their product off the market and get their nut covered, get their rent roll paid. And that is the perfect time to do deals. There was a video that was posted in May where the guy said there are things that rental arbitrage gurus won't tell you. I honestly didn't watch the video because I'm not going to give that much time to somebody who doesn't know about rental arbitrage, but I did read the comments and some of the transcript. And what the basis of this video was, and this might be the only exposure you have to rental arbitrage, and that's why we're touching on this topic, is that there's a belief that when you rent a property, you rent it on the landlord's terms, where you pay the first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, all that stuff. Well, that's actually very much not true. A negotiation for a rental contract is a negotiation. And as a business, myself, the reason why I have 120 properties and we're scaling to 170 is because I require 4 weeks of rent for free on the front end. I try to get 6 to 10 weeks of rent for free on the front end, which means I don't pay rent for 10 weeks. And if you think this is not possible, my deal in Austin that we just did, which you can see, you can see my video on smart locks, the one that I use smart locks. I was actually installing smart locks on these 11 doors in Austin. They gave me 10 weeks of rent for free on that property. I have new deals in Philly. They gave me 10 weeks of rent for free on those deals in Philly. We're about to pick up a whole building in Dallas, and we're going to get 6 to 10 weeks of rent for free on that building. That is because it is a sale. It's a negotiation. Now, this could be the hardest part for you to get into rental arbitrage, which is to wear that hat, to be that fierce negotiator. But if you can see the value that rental arbitrage provides to landlords in a very key market, which is times of uncertainty, you may find it that you feel good about asking a landlord for free rent in return for the fact that you're going to guarantee that their mortgage gets paid. You guys are a team now. Now, I teach this in previous videos here on YouTube. You are very much welcome to watch any of my free content. There's 300 plus videos here. I've been teaching how to Airbnb rental arbitrage for free. I might actually be the biggest channel and the biggest operator, most successful operator on this planet that teaches, but I can guarantee you, if anything, regardless of that, I'm the only one on YouTube that gives as much game away for free as I do, just because I was very poor growing up, and a lot of the people that watch this channel, they're in the same circumstance, and this is a channel that's designed to get people out of that situation. You are probably not nearly that poor because you own property. If you're watching this video, that's my intention for this. I want to save your situation over the next year, but also open your mind up to a new version of this business model that'll help you to scale. So to get to rental arbitrage and to get the landlord to rent you an apartment with very little money down up front, you can renegotiate last month's rent. And one of my favorite ways to get people to not charge me last month's rent is I sign a longer than 1 year lease, and I tell them, hey, it's just business. On a 2-year-long lease, we're not going to pay you the last month's rent. We're not going to give you cash and let it sit stale for that long. It's just a waste of cash. So tell you what, I'll give you the first 2 months of rent, half the security deposit, and then the next 8 weeks are free. So that means that over 4 months, I've paid the first 2 months of rent, I got 2 months of rent for free, and then I pay the 5th month. But I've burned up all the invested cash. I don't have a last month's rent sitting waiting to get utilized that was just wasted money. And if you do this on 5 or 10 properties, if the rent is say $2,000 a month, sure, you're in for $4,000 plus half security deposit, so $5,000 per property just in rental costs. But you get that pretty much paid down over the course of 4 months, and you have 2 months of rent for free. If that is on Airbnb, and you say for a studio apartment spend $5,000 or so on furnishings, then you're spending about $50,000 on 5 apartments, and you get 4 months of operations. Now for 4 months of operations on 5 doors, if you're generating, say, even just $3,000 of cash, which is actually kind of low considering your rent was $2,000, you're still generating $15,000 a month. You get all $50,000 of that back by month 4. So if you're afraid of putting money into arbitrage because you don't want to miss the opportunity to buy a house, I can guarantee you if you do this right, all of the money that you invest into arbitrage will come back to your pocket in full within 6 months. But you need to negotiate with the landlord to get free rents on the front end. So when you see somebody saying that what a guru isn't telling you is that you spend too much money anyway and it's not worth it because you don't get debt pay down. Well, what I just told you is that for $50,000, you can get 5 doors that are cash flowing, typically $8,000 to $1,000 a month net income. And you get all of your money back 4 to 6 months, which means that you can invest it again in another 5 doors. And so that means that every year you're getting 10 properties that might be making you $1,000 per month. So at the end of a year, doing just arbitrage, you'll get your $50,000 back, and you've got 10 properties making you $10,000 a month cash flow. So a year from now, maybe it's time to buy another property. You've got your $50,000 back, and you've got $10,000 of static income per month. And it's not gonna be passive because you're gonna be running your own hospitality business now, and that's the whole goal, is you don't wanna hire a co-host for these. But the cool thing about apartments is the housekeeping is maybe 40 minutes or an hour long. They're very simple properties, right? A studio or 1-bedroom property in an apartment complex is very simple to clean. Now with 10 apartments, you can hire 2 full-time housekeepers. And those full-time housekeepers can clean for you and do those apartments, but they can also go and clean your houses as necessary as well. If you have a house like a 4-bedroom house, you probably have 2 housekeepers show up and clean for 3 or 4 hours at a time. So this is the part that you have scale and you have consistency enough that you can pay housekeepers by the hour. And just the cost reduction on your housekeeping for your home by having them clean your apartments is worth doing this in the first place. Now having this level of consistency, the steady beating of the drum, very little money spent, very little money earned, right? Apartments might make you $100 to $200 a night where your homes are making you $500 to $1,000 a night, sure. But that the little incremental money, the lower risk guests where if something goes wrong, the refund that you give is only $100 instead of $1,000, allows you to start taking risks on hiring customer service staff. Somebody who helps with check-ins and check-outs, somebody who does a little bit of maintenance here or there. Because of how easy this becomes at this lower level, it is much easier to hire these people. All the channels on YouTube right now that are telling you to use co-hosts and that it's too hard to do arbitrage because you'll have to wear too many hats. This is a Hunter hat, by the way. Yes, I watch anime. The people that are telling you that you have to wear too many hats are assuming that it's just as hard to run an Airbnb business with apartments as it is houses. And no, it's like 5 times easier. It's so super easy because the landlord is largely on the hook for repairs and all this other stuff, and apartments have less moving pieces. They're usually less old. Things break less frequently, check-ins are much more easy to do, and the guests are a different type of traveler. It's usually 1, 2, 3, 4 people instead of big groups. So there's less parties, and there's less, just drama in general. And you're in luck because this YouTube channel does literally have everything you need to know to do Airbnb arbitrage. There are a few things that I don't share, like my literal script when talking to landlords and how I get them to give me 10 weeks of rent for free, but I think that's a competitive advantage that I want to keep as often as possible, and I only have a very small group of students that I coach on that.
Tampering with continuum probabilities is forbidden. I was just doing exactly what it said in the book.
For example, I'm doing a seminar July 8th through 10th, and I'm limiting it to 48 chairs. And I'm gonna teach people 2-day session on how exactly I negotiate all these deals and all of the sales training needed, but I'm not taking in a large amount of people because I don't want 10,000 people doing exactly what I do, because then it won't work for me as much because other people are doing it. Competitive advantage is something that other people cannot do. And that's why I need us to circle back to the whole concept of scale and lowering our internal costs and having apartments mixed in with our houses, because this is a competitive advantage that all the other homeowner vacation rental people don't have. If you do what I'm telling you to do now, a year from now, your competitors will be farther removed from the customer than you, will have a 30%, 40% higher cost basis than you, will be unable to adapt to adverse market conditions than you, they'll be serving a less broad consumer type than you, and they'll have less data, they'll have less feedback than you. They won't have their own staff, So they won't be able to drop rates, or they won't be able to like pivot and change what kind of length of stays that they want to service and all the other cool stuff that could come with it. They just won't be able to do it. But you, the real estate investor that is touching Airbnb, you can become an Airbnb business owner, a hospitality operator, and change your future. That is the most important thing that I think I can give you right now. And I don't want to slam some of your favorite YouTubers, but most people who teach how to Airbnb, who own property, have this deep-seated bias that this is real estate, and they're unable to learn the difference. And most of them haven't put in the 10,000 hours. They haven't spent hundreds of hours cleaning toilets. They haven't wrenched together 20, 30, 40 apartments worth of furniture. They haven't talked to 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 guests. They haven't dealt with lockouts or repairs or resolutions on Airbnb where they had to get guests to pay for things. They haven't had it where, guests maybe stole an entire apartment worth of furniture and they had to scramble to get that fixed. They haven't dealt with adversarial issues with landlords before or lawsuits. They haven't done it all. They haven't put in the 10,000 hours because what they did is they picked up a property and then they hired a co-host and they hired a third-party housekeeping team. So they can tell you about some stuff, but they've never done it. And that's why you need this channel if you're gonna run an Airbnb business. There's not a single one out there that can give you everything else that you need. There are a couple good operators in the space, and I will, as I go, be looking for people who make good content, whose hearts are right, who wanna help the world, and I will promote them if I can find them. I promise you that. If you have any other questions, I want you to put them in the comments so that way I can assist you in adapting from a real estate investor to an Airbnb operator. Because like I said in the beginning of this video, you're likely not gonna be able to refi out of your property and expand. You're gonna be cash poor because you're gonna be forced to pay down your debt on a property that's worth less than what you financed it for. And this is a really tough spot to be in. It is a golden era for rental arbitrage right now because landlords are gonna be squirming, there's gonna be a lot of volatility in the market, and when there's a big spread from volatility, that's where arbitrage makes its most money. Again, my name's Sean Rakijic, your professional Airbnb host, short-term operator guy. 7 years experience, $10 million made just on Airbnb alone. I even teach multi-platform, VRBO, PEERSPACE, everything else here on this YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope to see you again in the next one. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.